Noticed something was wrong the moment she looked at me. It wasn't fear. It was something else entirely. A kind of interest that made no sense for the time or the place. It was almost 10 at night and I was already leaving the mall. I'd worked all day, my body exhausted. Makeup smudged and fading. The food court already closed. Security guards collecting the last trays. The sound of footsteps echoing through empty corridors. The fluorescent lights hummed above, casting long shadows that stretched across the polished floor. Everything felt hollow, like the building itself was holding its breath. I just wanted to smoke a cigarette and go home, to peel off the day and forget it ever happened. That's when she appeared. A woman in her mid-40s, hair pulled back tight, expensive clothes, high heels, clicking with purpose. She wasn't the type who stopped to talk to someone like me, and yet she did. She called me by name, said she'd seen me there before. Other times, always watching. She spoke calmly, politely, without hurry, as if time bent around her will. Would you accept good money just to talk? 1 hour a day. No touching, no commitment, just conversation. At first I laughed, didn't quite believe it. These things never come free, never without strings attached to pull you somewhere dark. But she spoke in a way that seemed real, seemed safe. And I was tired of chasing money that always stayed just out of reach. So primera accepted, even though something whispered in the back of my mind that I shouldn't. She scheduled the first meeting right there in the food court, after closing time. Said the mall stayed open for maintenance until later and that the security guards already knew she stayed around. Sometimes, that first night, everything felt slightly off. The ceiling lights, half extinguished. The food stalls with chairs stacked like forgotten monuments. And the two of us sitting in a corner with a small bottle of water each. The silence was thick, interrupted only by distant mechanical sounds. The building settling into its nocturnal self. She didn't ask anything about my work or my life. Nothing ordinary or expected. The questions were different, unsettling in their specificity. Do you scare easily? Have you ever dreamed that someone was watching you sleep? If someone told you they knew everything about you, what would you do? I thought maybe it was some kind of research or alternative therapy. Something academic and harmless. She took notes in a small notebook with a dark cover, her pen moving with practiced precision. On the second day, she arrived before me. She seemed happy to see me, as if I were an important piece of something larger, something I couldn't yet see. She brought coffee, complimented me, said I had a calmness that people rarely possess. But I wasn't calm at all. I just didn't know what to think. Didn't know how to read the situation unfolding around me. With each meeting, she changed the way she looked at me, became more direct, and the questions started to feel too personal, invasive in ways I couldn't name. Once she asked how I slept, whether I left the window open, if I lived alone, if anyone had a copy of my key. I started laughing nervously, trying to change the subject, deflecting with jokes that fell flat in the empty space between us. She noticed, but didn't insist, didn't push. She just wrote something else down and said, "It's okay. You're exactly the kind of person we're looking for." Have you ever felt like you were being studied, cataloged, prepared for something you couldn't understand? On the fifth night, the mall was too empty. No security guards passing by, no sounds of cleaning crews, and she brought a manila envelope. She said it was the week's payment, placing it on the table between us with careful deliberation. When I opened it, they weren't bills, they were photos. Photos of me, sleeping on my back, hair tied up, vulnerable and unaware. I stopped breathing for several seconds. I recognized my bed, the sheet, the curtain. It was my house, my bedroom, my violated privacy captured in glossy paper. What would you do if you discovered that your most private moments had been witnessed by a stranger? She looked at me firmly and said calmly, as if this were a normal conversation, an everyday exchange. This isn't a threat. It's just the beginning of something much bigger than you. In that moment, I froze. Couldn't even hold the envelope properly. My hands trembled and my throat closed. She just kept watching me, tranquil, as if she expected me to thank her for this revelation. I asked, or tried to ask, where she'd gotten those photos. My voice barely worked. She answered as if it were the simplest thing in the world, as if everyone did this. You sleep too lightly. That's dangerous. I swear for a few seconds, I thought it was a prank, that someone was filming. that a hidden camera would appear and explain everything away. But there was no one, no sound. The entire mall darkened. Just those weak white lights flickering in the distance, like dying stars, ... Share in the comments a statement beginning with, "I recognize that, ... about a moment when you felt truly seen by someone, whether for good or ill." Sometimes naming what we recognize helps us reclaim the power that recognition holds over us, helps us understand the difference between being known and being owned. I stood up trying to leave, but she asked me to sit down, said that if I left before time, I could ruin everything. Ruin what? I didn't know. She started talking as if she'd known me for a very long time, as if we shared history I couldn't remember. Said she'd been watching me for months, that she knew when I arrived, when I left, what I ate for lunch, who I talked to, what made me smile. She said someone like me couldn't stay lost among so many people ugly on the inside. Said I was useful, necessary, chosen. With each sentence she spoke, I felt smaller, diminished, reduced to something I no longer recognized as myself. She had a way of speaking that left no room for understanding, but also no room to react. I just wanted to leave, to run, to disappear into the night outside. When I finally managed to stand, she smiled and said, "You'll come back tomorrow, right? It's important." I didn't answer. I walked away quickly, clutching the envelope against my chest like it might protect me from what it contained. The mall seemed bigger than before, as if the corridor would never end, stretching into infinity. No security guards, no voices, just the sound of my heels and my heart pounding in my throat, in my ears, drowning out everything else. When I reached my car, trembling and disoriented, I threw the envelope onto the passenger seat and drove without looking to the sides, afraid of what I might see in my peripheral vision. At home, I locked everything, checked every window twice, and looked at the photos again. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before, something that made my blood turn cold. In all the photos, the angle came from the same place, from near the bedroom door. And in the reflection of the dresser mirror, you could see a silhouette, dark and patient. It was her. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen until dawn with the light on and my phone in my hand, watching shadows move across the walls, hearing sounds that might not have existed at all. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? A woman paid me to talk and gave me photos of myself sleeping. Who would believe that? Who would take it seriously? The next day, I didn't go to work. I stayed home all day listening to noises that maybe didn't exist, jumping at every creak and whisper. Late in the afternoon, someone knocked on the door. A single knock. Strong, dry, deliberate. I looked through the peephole and there was no one there. But on the floor leaning against the door was another envelope, waiting like a patient predator. This time it wasn't photos. It was pages with notes, her handwriting, phrases I remembered saying in our conversations, my own words written by her hand, distorted through her interpretation. And at the end, a different paper, folded carefully. "You still don't understand. You're not just part of this. You are the reason." It didn't say anything more, left me dangling in incomplete understanding. After that, I never went back to the mall. I changed my number, moved to a different apartment across town, stopped answering messages from people I knew, cut myself off from the life I'd built. But sometimes, when I pass somewhere with flickering white light, I feel someone watching, not with anger, but with that same calm she had, that terrible patience. And the worst part is that deep down I still hear her voice, low and intimate, as if she were on the other side of the table right now, saying that we still have so much to talk about, so much left unfinished between us. He wanted to know if I lived alone, if anyone knew I was there, if I usually told people where I was going. I deflected, answered carefully, measuring each word. His question stayed lodged in my mind like splinters I couldn't remove. But at the end of that night, he gave me more money than we'd agreed on, and that erased the discomfort for a while. Made me think maybe I was just being paranoid, reading danger into simple curiosity. On the third visit, the atmosphere changed completely. The house felt different, darker, with the windows covered by thick cloths that blocked out every trace of outside light. He seemed to calm, sitting in the same armchair as always, with the same glass of wine, waiting for me as if he already knew I wouldn't miss the appointment, as if my arrival was inevitable. And then he said something I'll never forget. words that still echo in my memory. I already knew you'd accept. They all do. That's why no one talks afterward. I went cold, every muscle in my body tensing. I asked what he meant by that, and he just smiled. A dry smile, no teeth showing, no emotion behind it, empty as a mask. He told me to relax, that we still had time, that there was no rush. I invented an excuse, said I needed to leave, that I had another appointment, and I stood up, trying to keep my movements casual and unhurt. When I went to the bathroom to get my bag, I realized the door was locked from the outside, trapping me in that small, tiled space. I knocked, called out, trying to keep the panic from my voice. He answered from the living room with that same calm voice, unsettling in its steadiness. It's okay, I lock it, so nobody comes in by accident. But there was nobody else there besides us. No one who could wander in. No one who needed to be kept out. That's when I saw it. The detail that changed everything. On top of the sink sat a toothbrush with red lipstick stains and a small container with cotton still dirty with makeup. Foundation and mascara residue visible on the white fibers. But this was his house, and he supposedly lived alone. At least that's what everyone said, what I'd been told. I tried to hide my fear, but my body betrayed me completely. My hands were sweating. My heart pounded so hard I thought he'd hear it from the other room. Hear it beating against my ribs like something trying to escape. The toothbrush left me paralyzed, unable to process what it meant. It was a small detail, insignificant on its own. But everything in that place began to feel wrong, contaminated by some truth I didn't want to understand. After I saw that, I looked around, trying to find a window, some opening, some escape route. But the studio apartment was too enclosed and the air felt heavy, suffocating, as if no wind had circulated through there for a long time, as if the space itself was holding secrets. I grabbed my phone and pretended to send a message, but there was no signal, not a single bar, nothing connecting me to the world outside. From the living room, he kept talking as if we were in the middle of a normal conversation, as if nothing strange was happening. "You look like her, you know," he said, his voice drifting through the doorway. "Same way of looking at things. I just hope you don't do the same thing she did." I couldn't respond, couldn't find words. I stood there frozen, trying to understand what he meant by that, trying to piece together a story I didn't want to know. Then I heard the sound of the chair scraping across the floor and his footsteps coming in my direction, measured and deliberate. My body locked up completely, every instinct screaming, ... Have you ever wondered why we ignore the signs that something is wrong, even when they're right in front of us? When he got close, he looked at me calmly and said there was a rule to maintain our verbal agreement, that I couldn't see anyone else besides him anymore, that it was a matter of respect, of loyalty. I went mute, words dying in my throat. He opened the bathroom door with a key, led me out, and walked ahead as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just revealed something terrible. I grabbed my bag and tried to act normal, tried to hide that I wanted to leave immediately, desperately. My hand trembled so much I could barely open the zipper, the metal teeth chattering together. He watched me silently, with that same emotionless smile stretching across his face, said he'd walked me to the gate. But the gate also had a latch on the inside, another barrier between me and freedom. When he went to open it, the key fell to the floor with a metallic clink. I took the opportunity to look around again, and that S, when I noticed that beside the refrigerator, there was a wooden door locked with a padlock. Heavy and industrial. I swear it wasn't there the other times. Or maybe I just hadn't noticed, hadn't looked carefully enough. I shouldn't have stared. He saw that I'd noticed, and his tone changed completely. He became serious, hard, all pretense of friendliness evaporating. He said I shouldn't meddle where I wasn't invited, shouldn't ask questions that weren't mine to ask. ... Leave in the comments your reflection, beginning with I commit to, about trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. Sometimes our bodies know the truth before our minds are willing to accept it, and honoring that knowing can save us from dangers we can't yet name or understand. Justa Greed lowered my head in submission, and left as fast as I could without running, without showing how terrified I truly was. Outside, the air felt different, clean and cool against my skin. I almost cried with relief, but my body still trembled with aftershocks of adrenaline. I grabbed my phone to request a ride, and the signal returned instantly, all the bars appearing at once. Before leaving the street, I looked back over my shoulder, unable to stop myself. He was still at the gate, standing motionless, watching me with that patient gaze, and the cloth covering the window moved slightly, as if someone were standing behind him, as if he wasn't alone after all. I didn't tell anyone that same day. Kept it locked inside where it festered and grew. It took me a week to respond to the message from the colleague who'd referred me. She asked if everything went okay. I just wrote yes, a lie that felt safer than the truth. But at night I dreamed about that toothbrush, and in the dream it was wet, dripping, as if someone had just used it, as if someone was still there. Sometime later, I received a call from an unknown number, a blocked caller ID. It was a woman's voice, very weak, barely audible, like she was speaking from very far away. She only asked one question. "Do you still go there?" I asked who she was, my pulse quickening, but the call dropped, cutting off before she could answer. I tried to return the call and the number didn't exist. Came back as disconnected or invalid. In the following days, I started noticing small things, details that didn't add up. One of the photos I had on my service profile disappeared from the internet, vanished without explanation. Another appeared with the name of a woman I'd never seen, never heard of. The address listed was the same as the studio apartment, that same cursed location. I tried to talk to the colleague who referred me, and she swore she did. I remember giving me that client-esque contact information. Said she'd never been there, didn't know what house I was talking about, looked at me like I was confused or lying. I thought it was fear, that she was protecting herself, but the way she spoke seemed sincere, genuinely bewildered. In the end, I went to the street where the studio apartment was located, trying to confirm I wasn't losing my mind, that the place had actually existed. I went in the afternoon, still light outside, safer. But when I arrived, the house had its gate closed and a rusted foreign sign hanging crooked on the fence. I clapped, called out, standard Brazilian greeting. Nobody answered, no movement from inside. A neighbor came out from the house next door and asked what I wanted, suspicious and protective. I said I was looking for a man who lived there. Gaby's name described him as best I could. She made a strange face, confused and slightly disturbed, and said nobody had lived there for months, that the last tenant had disappeared, and since then the owner couldn't rent it to anyone, couldn't even give it away. I asked what the previous tenant was like, and she spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully. He was a quiet man, always coming in with a different woman each time, but one day he just vanished, and after that, strange things started happening. People would hear noises at night, see lights through those covered windows, but when anyone checked, the house was empty, completely abandoned. One of them left her things there and never came back to get them. I thanked her, acted normal, and left as quickly as I could without appearing to flee. But the part that haunts me to this day is that as I was crossing the street, I looked back at the gate one more time, and I swear I saw the cloth in the window move, shifting like something alive. There was no wind, not even a breeze. And for an instant I thought I saw a face there, pressed against the glass behind the fabric. It wasn't his face. It was a woman wearing red lipstick, her expression blank and hollow. Since then, I've never accepted anything based on verbal agreement. No deal, no proposal, no promise that isn't written down and witnessed. Because when someone insists on hiding things, on keeping secrets locked behind padlocked doors, it's because they know what happens afterward. What becomes of the people who disappear into those spaces. And I still don't know what happened to the ones who came before me. The women whose things were left behind, whose toothbrushes remained on bathroom sinks, whose lives ended somewhere in that sealed apartment. I got into that car thinking I was going to work. Nothing more than that. Nothing strange, nothing wrong, just another job on another Friday. It was late afternoon, the kind of day when the city is already half exhausted. People moving through the streets like they're underwater. A friend passed me the contact information. Said he was a regular client outside the city. Everything proper and legitimate. Transportation included, food provided, and the guy paid in advance. No complications. I needed the money desperately. Needed it more than I needed to ask questions. She swore he was calm, that he just liked company, conversation, nothing demanding or dangerous. The driver arrived in a dark t-shirt and cap, casual and unremarkable. He didn't seem nervous or aggressive, didn't have that edge some men carry. He called me by name, asked if I was ready, and opened the back door with what seemed like practiced courtesy. I got in, understanding he wasn't the client, just the one who transported, just a messenger between 2 points. Freezing. He barely spoke, sometimes responding with a grunt or "we almost there" or "one more hour" in a monotone voice. I noticed he took a strange turn-off, unusual and unexpected. It was as if he were avoiding the toll booths deliberately, taking back roads instead of the main route. I thought maybe it was to save money, to pocket the difference. But with each detour, the road became emptier, more isolated. I looked at my phone and found no signal, no connection to anything. I asked if it would take much longer. He responded, laughing, a sound without humor. "You've already been paid for, right? Just relax." That froze me completely, stopped my breath. I had E&M mentioned anything about payment, and he said it like he was repeating something he'd heard before, words someone else had scripted for him. I looked ahead through the windshield. No signs, just brush and some distant lights. That might have been houses, or might have been something else entirely. I tried to make conversation, to establish some human connection, asking his name, where he was from, anything to break the terrible silence. He answered once, then stopped, shutting down. The silence became heavier than the sound of the car engine, oppressive and thick. I started noticing everything with heightened awareness. The way he locked the doors, the window that wouldn't roll down no matter how many times I pressed the button, the GPS that was turned off, how he never looked at me in the rearview mirror when I picked up my phone again, trying to find some way to communicate with the outside world. He just said flatly, "It won't work. There's no signal out here." His voice was calm but cold, arctic. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a fact, like he was describing the weather, ... Do you remember the last time you ignored that voice in your head telling you something was wrong? After a while, the sky turned completely dark. Stars appearing overhead, but offering no comfort. I had no idea where we were anymore. No landmarks or familiar points of reference. He passed through a broken gate, the kind you'd find at an abandoned farm entrance. Metal hanging at angles. There was a gas station visible in the distance. Lights on, but looking deserted. But he didn't stop. Didn't even slow down. That's when I realized this wasn't just some arrangement, some simple transaction. I wasn't going to meet anyone. I was being taken somewhere, delivered to someone for purposes I couldn't yet imagine. And the strangest thing was that he didn't seem nervous at all. He seemed accustomed to this, as if he'd done it many times before, as if this was routine. My body trembled, but I tried not to show it. Tried to maintain some facade of control. I attempted a joke, said I was hungry, that we needed to stop somewhere for food. He responded with a "could not much further," and the road became even narrower, more claustrophobic. The brush pressed against the windows, scraping and tapping. Sometimes I could see the headlights reflecting off a fence or a posted sign, but it would disappear immediately. I thought about opening the door and jumping out, rolling into the darkness. But the car was moving too fast and I didn't know what waited out there in that wilderness. The only thing I managed to do was send a message, even without signal, just so it would be saved in my history, as if someone someday might see it, might understand what happened. I wrote simply, "I'm going outside the city. I don't know where, ... Right in the comments, a statement beginning with, "I feel that, ... about a moment when you knew you were in danger, but couldn't escape." Sometimes acknowledging our fear, giving it voice and shape, helps us process trauma and recognize danger patterns that might save us in the future. Helps us trust ourselves when everything tells us to be polite instead of safe. The car crossed a small bridge and suddenly started climbing a dirt road full of potholes, each one jolting my body against the seat. With each impact, I thought he would stop, that surely this couldn't continue, but he kept going, relentless. And the worst part was that I began to understand that maybe he was onto the worst part of this story. That maybe he was just fulfilling a delivery, completing a transaction he'd made 100 times before. I wasn't a passenger in any real sense. I was what he was transporting, cargo with a pulse. When the car stopped for the first time, I felt my entire body freeze, go rigid with terror. It wasn't a gas station, wasn't a house. Didn't even look like it was near any town or civilization. It was just an open field, with a large iron gate half open and some weak lights visible further ahead, flickering like dying fireflies. He turned off the engine and stayed quiet with his hands on the wheel. Statues. No sound at all except the metallic ticking of the cooling engine, each click like a countdown. After a few seconds he picked up his phone, looked at the screen with its blue glow, illuminating his face, and said quietly, "We're here." He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my humanity, just opened his door, got out, walked around, and opened mine. I thought about running, about disappearing into that darkness behind us, but the road back was too dark, too unknown. No headlights, no sounds of other cars, just the noise of crickets creating a wall of sound. He made a gesture with his head, a simple motion that meant get out. I stayed frozen in place. Un hable, to move. Then he spoke again. "It won't take long. Just do what they tell you." I asked what this was, who I was going to meet, what was expected of me. He answered without emotion, "I just deliver." When he said that, I understood truly that to him I was just cargo, just another package to be dropped off and forgotten. I got out trembling, my legs barely supporting my weight. The ground was dirt, full of stones that rolled under my feet. There was a gate ahead, with a light on above it, harsh and fluorescent. Inside I could see an old truck and a house without paint, set back from the entrance, surrounded by nothing. He knocked on the gate with his knuckles 3 times, a signal. A woman appeared, thin, wearing a sweatshirt, hair pulled back tight, eyes hard. She looked at me, then at him, assessing. "You brought her?" He just nodded once, confirmation without words. She opened the gate and signaled for me to enter, her gesture impatient. I took 2 steps backward, instinct overriding everything, but he grabbed my arm with force and whispered close to my ear, his breath hot, "Don't make this worse for yourself." I've never forgotten the tone he used, the way those words landed. It wasn't anger, wasn't passion. It was a warning, a statement of how things worked in this place. I entered through that gate, crossing a threshold I couldn't uncross. The woman told me to leave my bag near the door, her voice flat and administrative. I didn't know what to think, couldn't process what was happening. The house smelled of disinfectant, chemical and strong, trying to cover something else underneath. And in the corner of the room, there was a table with several bags piled up, designer and cheap ones mixed together, belongings that had been separated from their owners. I stopped in the entrance, unable to go further. She looked at me, picked up her phone, and sent a message to someone, her thumbs moving quickly across the screen. She stayed silent for a few seconds, waiting for a response that made her nod slightly. Then she said flatly, "Without warmth, you're going to wait a bit. Sit down." I sat on the couch trying to think of some way to escape, some opening or opportunity, but the driver was still outside leaning against the car, smoking and watching the door like a sentinel. A few minutes later, a man arrived, not very old, but with that bearing of someone who commands, who's used to being obeyed without question. He entered without greeting anyone, looked at me quickly with an assessing gaze, and asked the woman, "Is this the one from Friday?" She responded simply, "Yes." He walked over to the couch, stood there looking at me without saying anything, studying me like I was merchandise to be evaluated. I tried to ask what was happening, tried to find my voice, but he just said, "You've already been paid, right? Stay calm. Tomorrow morning they'll take you back." I didn't know if I believed him, didn't know if tomorrow would ever come, but it was either that or try to leave in the darkness without signal, without a road, without knowing which direction led to safety. The woman led me to a small room with a mattress on the floor and a window locked from the outside, bars visible through the glass. She said I should sleep there, as if sleep were possible in such a place. There was a cup of water and a clean towel, small gestures of normalcy in an abnormal situation, but no key on the inside of the door, no way to secure myself. I couldn't sleep at all that night, lay there staring at the ceiling with my heart pounding. I could hear the sound of cars arriving and leaving throughout the night. Low conversations I couldn't quite make out, sometimes the gates slamming shut with metallic finality. In the early morning hours, I saw the headlights of the same car that brought me pulling away, heading back toward wherever it had come from. The driver didn't look back, didn't acknowledge what he'd done. The next day, the sun beat down hard and unforgiving. The woman brought bread, coffee, and an old cell phone without a chip, with just one number saved in the contacts. She said it was to let them know when I arrived. I asked to ride where, but she pretended not to hear, turned away and left me alone with that phone and its single mysterious number. After a few hours, another driver appeared, different from the first, younger, wearing a light-colored cap. Said he was going to take me back. Said it casually, like this was normal work. I got in the car without saying anything, without asking questions because I was afraid of the answers. The road was similar, but I didn't recognize anything. No landmarks or familiar turns. Halfway through the journey, he asked conversationally, "Did everything go okay back there?" I went mute. Couldn't find words. He laughed. The kind of laugh that says he doesn't really care about the answer. That he's just making noise to fill the silence. ... What would it mean to you to truly trust your instincts, even when it means walking away from money you desperately need? He dropped me off near the bus station in the early afternoon. The place crowded with normal people living normal lives. When I looked back, the car had already disappeared into traffic. Anonymous and untraceable. I grabbed my phone and saw that the messages from the previous night had all gone through at once when the signal returned. Sent in a batch, but there were no responses. No concerned friends asking where I was. I tried to call my friend, the one who'd arranged the job, who'd promised it was safe. She didn't answer. Phone ringing into emptiness. After a few hours, the number came back as out of area. Disconnected. I never saw her again. Never found out if she did this to others. If there were more women like me delivered to that place in the middle of nowhere. Share in the comments something starting with, "I have learned that..." about recognizing when a situation has crossed from uncomfortable to dangerous. Sometimes the lessons we learn in our darkest moments become the wisdom that protects not just ourselves, but others who might follow the same path, who might need to hear that their fear is valid and their instincts are worth more than any amount of money. 4 weeks afterward, I heard car sounds at night and froze completely, body remembering what my mind tried to forget. It took me a long time to go back to work, to trust any arrangement or any promise. And to this day, when someone calls me for something outside the city, offers transportation and promises it's safe, I say I don't do that anymore, that it's not my area. Because that Friday I understood something fundamental about certain transactions. There are people who do untake to have you there with them. They pay to leave you there for someone else. And the worst part of everything is that nobody ever asks where they took you, what happened in those hours. They only ask if you made it back at all, if you survived whatever it was they delivered you into. I'd never had a problem with clients who were too calm before. Sometimes it was even better. Less talking, less risk, less performance required. But this one wasn't like the others. Wasn't following any pattern I recognized. It was early in the week, a Monday. The kind of day that feels like it will never end. I'd gone back to working recently after almost stopping completely because of some things that happened at the end of last year. Things I tried not to think about too much. But anyway, that night I was near downtown, at a small plaza between an old hotel and a commercial building. Anyone who knows the area understands. It fills up with people after 8 at night. Becomes a different place entirely. This guy called to me in a somewhat different way than usual. He wasn't staring too much or calling from a distance. He just pulled up his car and opened the window partway. His voice was low, almost shy, uncertain. He asked the basic questions, and then, kind of awkwardly, said he preferred to go to his place, that it was nearby, walking distance. I went, saw nothing wrong with the setup. It was a small apartment, very normal and unremarkable. American-style kitchen, light-colored couch, weak yellow lighting that made everything soft. The bed was made up neatly. There were no photos of anyone anywhere. No personal touches or signs of real habitation. He seemed clean, smelled good, was polite and courteous, and seemed more tired than anything else. Exhausted by something I couldn't identify. Everything went very smoothly. Perhaps too smoothly. Too easy. He barely spoke during any of it. Just quiet and present. And at the end, when everything was finished and it was time for me to leave, he looked at me with something vulnerable in his eyes and asked, "Can you stay until morning?" I found it strange immediately. Alarm bells ringing softly. But he explained that he was feeling lonely, that he'd pay double, that it was just to sleep, that I could keep the television on, that he just wanted company, just another human presence in the darkness. And since the whole atmosphere had been light and uncomplicated, I accepted, told myself it was safe enough. I took a shower, put on my loose, comfortable clothes, and we lay down watching an old program on TV. Something meaningless and distracting. He lay on his back, covered up to his chest with the blanket, and I stayed turned to the other side, just wanting time to pass quickly so morning would come. There was no more conversation between us, and I ended up falling asleep despite myself. Exhaustion winning over caution. But there, around the middle of the night, something woke me up suddenly. It wasn't a noise or a touch. It was that kind of sensation that wakes you without explanation. Some animal instinct sensing wrongness. I opened my eyes slowly and looked behind me. He wasn't in the bed anymore, his side empty and cool. The TV was still on, but with that low background volume that fills the silence without really covering it. And that's when I heard a soft crying sound coming from the bathroom. Low, muffled, like someone trying to hold the sound inside their chest. It sounded like someone trying to keep control, trying not to break completely. I got up slowly and called out his name softly. Nothing came back. No response. I stood in the hallway for a while, uncertain and uncomfortable, until he finally responded with a choked voice, thick with emotion. "Everything's fine. You can lie back down. I'll be back soon." I went back to the bedroom, but I couldn't lie down. Couldn't pretend everything was normal. I sat on the edge of the bed waiting, listening to the muffled sounds continuing behind that closed bathroom door, wondering what kind of pain lived in this quiet man. He came out of the bathroom sometime later, his face wet, hair disheveled and sticking up at odd angles. He walked slowly, heavily, sat on the couch and stayed there with his hands between his legs, staring at the floor like he was looking through into something deeper. Then he said something I'd never heard from any client before. "And look, I've heard heavy things, confessions that would break most people." He said this, "When you leave, take me with you." At first, I laughed, not understanding, thinking it was some kind of joke or metaphor. I asked what he meant by that, and he just responded, his voice hollow. "I know it's strange, but there is something coming to get me, and I do wanted to find me here." That room became cold in a strange way, but not cold in temperature, not something you could measure with a thermometer. It was like a silence, a weight in the air pressing down on everything. And the way he spoke didn't seem like a joke or madness or manipulation. It was fear, genuine and deep, the kind that lives in your bones. I regretted accepting to spend the night there and thought about grabbing my things and leaving immediately. Getting out, well, I still could. But at the same time, I felt sorry for him because he seemed like someone broken from the inside, shattered in ways that couldn't be fixed. He wasn't someone trying to scare me or force anything. Wasn't playing games or performing. He was someone who was already surrendering to something inevitable. Something he couldn't name but could feel approaching. I ended up dozing off again without even realizing it. Exhaustion, overwhelming fear. And when I woke up, the sun was already starting to hit the window, golden and warm. I looked to the side and he wasn't in the bed. His space empty and undisturbed. The bathroom door was open. The couch empty. Everything still and quiet. I got up and called his name into the silence, but nothing came back. No response or sound. The kitchen was untouched. The front door closed and locked from the inside. I grabbed my things and started to leave, thinking he must have gone out to work or something normal like that. Some explanation that made sense. But when I opened the door and went down the stairs, it was a building without a doorman. Just 3 floors of apartments. I stopped at the iron gate that only opens from the inside, and I looked back over my shoulder. He was there standing on the inside, still and motionless, watching me with that same sad expression. He didn't say anything, just raised his hand as if to wave goodbye. A simply Hester, but he didn't smile, had no expression at all really, just that sad, heavy face, and it felt like a real farewell, final and irreversible. I unlocked the gate and stepped outside into the morning air. When I turned to close it behind me, he was already gone, vanished like he'd never been there at all. I left that building with the strange sensation that I'd forgotten something important, left something behind. My body was moving forward, but my head was still partly there, caught in that moment, that silent goodbye, that way he stood at the gate. It was as if he'd been putting me outside in a way that wasn't normal, wasn't natural. I spent the morning feeling disconnected, floating. I got home, lay down, tried to sleep a bit more, but my head kept spinning with images and questions. I kept replaying what he'd said, the way he looked at me, that strange phrase about taking him with me, carrying him away from whatever was coming. I kept trying to fit it into some logical place, some reasonable explanation, but it wouldn't make sense. At lunchtime, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who also works in this field. thinking she might understand. She joked, saying he must have been using something or that he was just a dramatic attention seeker, lonely and performing. I wanted to believe that was it. Wanted the simple explanation, but it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. The afternoon of the next day, I received a message from a strange number I didn't recognize. It just said, "Were you at apartment 303? I responded, asking who it was, my heart already starting to beat faster. Then a call came through. It was a woman's voice, professional and cold. She said she was from the building management, needed to verify some information. She asked for my full name, formal and official. I got nervous, stomach tightening. She said she needed to speak with me in person, that it was important. Her voice was dry, kind of hard, no warmth in it. We arranged to meet in the building lobby the same day, late afternoon. I went, even though everything in me said not to. When I arrived, she was there with a young man who seemed to be the building manager or janitor or something. I couldn't tell. And there was a police officer too, in uniform. In that moment, my body went completely cold, fear flooding through me. They asked if I'd been there 2 nights before. I said yes, that I'd been called by a client and that I didn't know his name. Hadn't asked for details, just that he was a manalone.com, who paid me to spend the night. A simple transaction. Then the police officer turned to me and asked with careful precision, "Are you certain you saw him alive? Who would you be if you could no longer trust your own memories? Your own experience of what happened?" Then I didn't understand anything anymore. The world tilting sideways. They looked at each other with meaningful glances. And then the woman spoke slowly, measuring her words. She said the owner of that apartment had been found dead the previous week, that he'd taken his own life, and that the body was only discovered on the 12th, 5 days before I was supposedly there, and that the apartment had been locked and sealed since then, untouched. I laughed immediately, a nervous laugh from someone who thinks they misunderstood, who's waiting for the punchline. I said it wasn't possible, that I was there, that he received me at the door, that the apartment was clean with the smell of disinfectant, with the bed made up, TV working perfectly, that he paid me in cash, physical bills I could touch. I told them about the middle of the night, about the crying in the bathroom, about the way he said something was coming to get him, about his fear and sadness. I told them everything, every detail I could remember, trying to make them understand. They kept looking at me like I was making it up, like I was delusional or lying. The police officer asked if I'd used any substances, if I was high or impaired. The woman asked if I could have entered the wrong apartment, gotten confused in the building. I said no. Absolutely not. I showed them the door, walked them through the stairs, pointed out the broken light on the 2nd floor, the entrance mat, every detail matching perfectly, ... expressed in the comments, beginning with, "I thank, ... something about a moment that changed how you see reality. Sometimes gratitude for survival, for making it through impossible situations. Helps us integrate experiences that our minds struggle to accept. Helps us acknowledge that some things exist beyond our understanding of how the world works." They took me upstairs, all of us climbing in tense silence. When we got to the 3rd floor, the woman unlocked apartment 303 with keys from building management. The door opened and the smell hit me immediately. Not disinfectant, but something else. Something stale and closed off and wrong. The apartment was the same layout but completely different. Covered in dust, mail piled by the door, furniture positioned differently than I remembered. The bed wasn't made. It was stripped down to the mattress. The TV was unplugged, pushed against the wall. Everything was covered in that thick layer of dust that only accumulates when nobody has been there for weeks, when air hasn't circulated and life hasn't touched anything. But I recognized it. Recognized the space, even transformed by abandonment. The police officer asked me again to describe what I saw that night. And I did, my voice shaking. I described the yellow lighting, the made bed with its navy blue comforter, the smell of his cologne, the sound of his crying, his wet face when he came out of the bathroom, the way he raised his hand in goodbye. They showed me a photo then, pulled it up on a phone screen, asked if this was the man, and it was him. Exactly him. Same face, same sad eyes, same everything. But in the photo, he looked different somehow. Younger maybe, or just more alive. More present. They told me he'd been found in the bathroom, that he'd been there for days before anyone noticed, that the building had been trying to reach his family. I started shaking, couldn't stop, because I'd been there. I'd touched things. I'd slept in that bed. I'd heard him cry. I'd talked to him, looked into his eyes, taken his money. The woman's expression softened slightly. Seeing my genuine terror, she said quietly that sometimes grief does strange things, that maybe I'd heard the story and confused it with a real experience, that trauma works in mysterious ways. But I knew what I'd experienced, knew the difference between dream and waking, knew that I'd been there with him somehow, in some way that didn't follow the rules of how things are supposed to work. The police officer said I could go, that they'd be in touch if they had more questions, treating me like a confused witness, rather than someone who'd experienced something impossible. I left that building and never went back. Never took clients in that area again, but sometimes late at night I remember his face in that doorway, the way he waved goodbye, and I wonder if he knew what was happening. If he understood that he was already gone and I was his last connection to the living world, his final goodbye before whatever was coming finally found him. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake sometimes, is wondering if there are others like him, spirits or echoes or whatever they are, reaching out in their loneliness, paying for company in whatever currency they still possess, not ready to be alone in whatever comes. After this, still afraid of the darkness that waits on the other side. Tentar novamente o cloud pode cometer erros. Confira sempre as respostas. Sonnet 4.5. Then the building manager, with the face of someone who'd already heard too much in that building, who'd seen too many strange things, said something that hasn't left my head to this day, words that echo in the quiet moments. He said, "You're telling me you saw him at the gate, that he opened it for you to leave." I confirmed, without understanding where he was going, what he was implying. And then he said slowly, deliberately, "So explain to me how, because that gate only opens from the inside and the key has been with me since the day they found him. Nobody has entered there since then. Nobody could have." In that moment I lost all strength in my legs, felt them give way beneath me, and I sat in a plastic chair that was there in the hallway. I trembled so much I thought I was going to faint. I thought my body would just shut down. The police officer took me to the station, made a report, asked various questions, checked my phone, looked at the timestamp of the ride-sharing app, and saw that I really did go there on the night I mentioned. That part at least was verifiable and real, except the apartment was officially closed, sealed by authorities. How many times have you dismissed something that happened to you just because it didn't fit what others believe is possible? I remember this man. His face is etched in my memory. He told me he was a cop, showed me his badge, and gave me an address for a shelter, promising help. I didn't trust him, but with the rain pouring down, I had no other choice. The place looked normal, but inside, they took our phones and locked the gate from the outside. They made us fill out invasive forms, and at the end, a chilling question. Would you accept participation in a new rehabilitation program? The next day, one of the women was just gone. That night, I decided to escape. I was at the bathroom window when I heard a voice call out my real name, a name I had never given them. It was him, the man from the street. I swear he was there. But here's the thing. They told me later he had been dead for days before I even met him. When the door opened fully, I panicked completely. Adrenaline flooding my system. I pretended I was just washing my face, casual and innocent. But my hand trembled so much that water ran down my arm, betraying my fear. A woman entered wearing an ID badge, but the name was covered with tape, hidden intentionally. She said they'd called me to update my information, said it like I had no choice. I wanted to say no, wanted to refuse, but she just turned her face and waited with infinite patience. There were more people in the corridor watching, blocking any escape. They took me to a small room with a metal table and a thick folder waiting there. Inside that folder were papers with my full name, my ID number, an old photo of me from before I lived on the streets, from a time I barely remembered. I asked where they got that information, how they knew these things. She responded that the government system was complete, comprehensive, but in the corner of the folder, the logo belonged to another organization, one I'd never heard of, something that didn't officially exist. They asked strange questions, questions that had nothing to do with helping me. If I took medication, if I'd ever been hospitalized, if I believed in God, if anyone would miss me if I disappeared. The more I answered, the more I realized none of this was about help or rehabilitation. It was about control, about making people disappear, ... Leave in the comments, beginning with, I decide. Something about choosing your own path, even when others try to control it. Sometimes declaring our decisions out loud, making them real through words, gives us the strength to follow through, even when we're afraid. Even when the easier path is compliance and silence. When I returned to the room, the others were completely silent, eyes wide and frightened. One of them whispered that she'd heard a car leave in the early morning hours, engine running quiet. The gate had creaked open, metal scraping, but nobody saw who went. Which bed was now empty. I knew then that I had to leave that night. That waiting would mean I'd be next. That whatever was happening to the women who disappeared would happen to me too. So I waited until the deepest part of night, when even the watchers grew tired. And I found my way out through that bathroom window after all, cutting my hands on the frame but not caring. Dropping into the dark yard below and running until my lungs burned in the lights of that place were far behind me, running toward whatever uncertain future waited, but knowing it was better than the certain fate. ID left behind. This time, 2 beds were empty. Their occupants vanished without explanation or goodbye. In the morning, the employee in the government vests called out names for medical consultation, his voice echoing down the corridor. He called mine first. My real name pronounced perfectly. My heart stopped completely, seized in my chest, but I stood up anyway, forcing my legs to move. If I ran right there, it would look like guilt, like I had something to hide, and they'd come after me harder. They guided me through a corridor that reeked of disinfectant, so strong it burned my nostrils and made my eyes water. At the end, there was a double door, institutional and forbidding. Before they opened it, I heard a sound of something metallic hitting metal, scraping and banging. It sounded like a gurney, like medical equipment being moved into position. When the door swung open, the light was too white, blinding and clinical, and for a second I saw a silhouette lying behind a screen, a body shape under fabric. The body was covered up to the neck with a sheet, completely still. The woman with the clipboard said in that same flat voice, "Lie down and stay calm. It's just a routine examination. Standard procedure." I took a step backward, every instinct screaming. She became irritated, her professional mask slipping, and called 2 men in uniform who appeared from nowhere. That's when I ran, pure survival taking over. I don't remember the path clearly, everything a blur of panic and adrenaline. I only know I went through an emergency staircase, metal steps clanging under my feet, and jumped over the side gate, scraping my arms on the rough metal. I cut my foot on a piece of broken glass but didn't stop. Kept running, limping, until I reached the avenue. Civilization and witnesses. Nobody came after me, which was almost more terrifying than pursuit. Like they knew I couldn't prove anything. Like they'd done this enough times to know how it worked. I managed to get a ride with a truck driver who took pity on me, bleeding and desperate. And he dropped me off downtown near the Central Plaza. I tried to report it to authorities, went to police stations and government offices, but nobody believed my story. Looked at me like I was crazy or high. They said it must have been a clandestine clinic or irregular shelter. Something unofficial, undeniable. Nothing they could investigate without more proof. A month later, after the physical wounds had healed, but the fear remained, I went back to that address with a friend for backup, for witness. The inn was still there, but renovated with a different name. A fresh coat of paint, covering the old identity. We pretended interest in renting a room, playing tourists or travelers. The receptionist handed us a paper to fill out. "Standard procedure," she said with a smile. At the top of the form, in small letters, easy to miss, was the name of the same organization from that folder, the one that shouldn't exist. And at the end of the sheet, that same question, waiting like a trap. Would you accept participation in a new rehabilitation program? Have you considered how many people disappear into systems that claim to help them? How many voices are silenced by institutions that should protect? This time I didn't fill it out. Didn't answer a single question. I just turned and walked out without looking back. My friend following close behind, both of us silent until we were blocks away. But sometimes I still dream about that white light, so bright it erased everything else, and about someone calling my full name in that corridor, knowing everything about me, even when I try not to remember, even when I change my name and my story and pretend to be someone else entirely. And the worst part, the part that keeps me vigilant and afraid, is wondering how many women didn't make it out. How many are still there behind those double doors under those white lights? How many accepted that rehabilitation program without knowing what it really meant? Without understanding that some doors only open one way and some programs are UNT designed to help you leave, but to make sure you never can. I carry their silence with me, those empty beds and vanished faces, wondering if anyone else remembers them or if they've been erased completely from the world's memory, existing only in the nightmares of those of us who escaped, who ran fast enough and were lucky enough to make it back, to tell a story nobody wants to believe.